I am 107 years old. And I want to tell you something that took me almost a century to understand. There is a certain kind of grief that nobody prepares you for. Not the grief of losing people, although I have lost more people than I can count. Not the grief of the body slowing down. The grief I am talking about is quieter than both of those. It is the grief of the conversations you never had. I have been sitting at deathbeds. I have held the hands of people I loved as they went. And I can tell you, without hesitation, without exception, that in those final hours, not one person was thinking about the things they wished they had said at work. Not one person was reviewing their to-do list. They were thinking about the conversations they never had. The ones they kept postponing. The ones they swallowed. The ones they told themselves they would get to someday, when things settled down, when the time was right. The time was never right. And then it was gone. I am 107 years old. The fog of what matters and what doesn't lifted for me a long time ago. And from that clear, high place, I can see 6 conversations, 6 specific ones, that most people never have. Not because they don't want to, but because nobody ever gave them permission. I am going to give you that permission today. Most people are carrying an apology they never delivered. It might be 20 years old. It might be 40. It sits in the chest like a stone, not heavy enough to break you on any given day, but always there, always weighing. I had a friend, a woman named Cecilia, 81 years old, who had not spoken to her daughter in 11 years over something that happened at a Christmas dinner. She told me once, sitting at my kitchen table with her coffee going cold, that she thought about calling every single day. Every single day. And every single day she told herself she would do it tomorrow. Cecilia died at 84. She never made the call. The apology was not about who was right. It never is. The apology was the door. And Cecilia spent 11 years standing on one side of it, waiting for someone to open it from the other side. At some age, and I don't know exactly when it happened for me, somewhere in my late 80s, I looked at every undelivered apology I was still holding and I saw them for what they were, cages I had built around myself. The apology is not a surrender. It is not a confession of total fault. It is a door. And you are allowed to open it. You can open it today. What replaced the weight of carrying it was something I can only describe as lightness. Room in my chest where a stone used to be. You don't have to wait. You can make that call before the sun goes down today. If this is landing for you, type the word open in the comments right now. I read every single one. Let's keep going, because conversation number 2 is the one people find the hardest. Conversation number 2, the love you never said out loud. We live in a world that taught men especially, but women too, that love is shown, not spoken. That the showing is enough. That the fact that you showed up, that you worked, that you stayed, that you provided, that all of this is self-evident proof of love that doesn't need to be spoken. It is not enough. I know because I watched my own husband, a man named Robert, the finest man I ever knew, go to his grave never having heard certain things from his father. His father was a good man. A devoted man. A man who showed up every single day of Robert's childhood. He just never said the words. And Robert, my strong, capable, wonderful Robert, carried that quiet hole in him his entire life. Robert's father died at 79. Robert was 53. And at 53 years old, my grown husband sat in the funeral home parking lot and wept like a boy, not for what he had lost, but for what he had never received and now never would. The words matter. The actual words. Not the implication. Not the assumption that the other person already knows. The words. Somewhere in my 90s, I started saying it. To my children. To their children. Without occasion, without sentimentality, without needing a reason. Just the words, offered plainly, like handing someone a glass of water. What I found on the other side was not embarrassment. What I found was that the people I said it to stood a little straighter. That something in their faces changed. That the words landed somewhere and built something. Think of the person right now. The one you have been assuming already knows. Tell them anyway. Not later. Now. Conversation number 3. The honest one you have been avoiding. You know the conversation I am talking about. There is one in your life right now. There has been, for months, maybe years. The one where you would have to say something true that the other person doesn't want to hear. Or hear something true that you don't want to face. Most people spend tremendous amounts of energy managing around these conversations. Rerouting. Softening. Keeping the surface smooth at enormous cost to what is real underneath. I had a daughter-in-law, her name was Patricia, who spent 12 years managing around an honest conversation with her husband about how lonely she was in their marriage. She kept the surface smooth. The dinners were made. The appearances were kept. She told herself she was protecting the family. At 67, Patricia was diagnosed with cancer. And lying in a hospital bed, she finally had the honest conversation. Her husband, devastated, bewildered, asked her why she had never said anything. She told me later, I thought I was protecting him. I was only protecting my own fear of the conversation. The conversation you are avoiding is not protecting anyone. It is only delaying the truth and taxing the relationship with the weight of what is not being said. You are allowed to have the honest conversation. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to come out beautifully. It just has to come out. Conversation number 4. The one about what you actually want. This one surprises people. But listen closely. Most people have never had a single conversation, with their spouse, their children, their friends, even themselves, about what they actually want their life to look like. Not what they are supposed to want. Not what the plan has always been. What they actually, genuinely, in the quiet of their own heart, want. I spent the first 80 years of my life following a script I had not written. The script said, marry, raise children, keep the house, serve the community, grow old quietly, don't ask for too much. I followed it faithfully. And somewhere in my mid-80s, I looked at the script and thought, when did I agree to this? I had never said out loud, not to my husband, not to my children, not to a single friend, what I actually wanted. Not because no one ever asked. Because I had been so trained not to want to specifically that I had nearly lost the thread of it entirely. At 86, I started having that conversation. With my children first. Then with myself, which, I'll tell you honestly, was the harder one. What replaced the silence around wanting was a kind of direction. A compass. I started making decisions from the inside rather than from the script. You are allowed to want things. You are allowed to say what they are out loud. You are allowed to have that conversation, even now, even today, even if you are not sure yet what the answer is. The conversation itself is how you find out. Conversation number 5. The forgiveness that is still waiting. Forgiveness is not for the person who hurt you. I want you to hear that clearly, because it is the single most misunderstood thing about the whole subject. I held a specific piece of unforgiveness in my chest for 31 years. 31 years. I know the number exactly because I kept count. A betrayal by someone I had trusted absolutely, someone who should have known better, someone who made a choice that cost me something I can never recover. I told myself the unforgiveness was a form of justice. That releasing it would be letting that person off the hook. That to forgive was to say what happened didn't matter. At 92, a woman I respected told me something I had never considered. She said that unforgiveness is not a punishment you give to the person who hurt you. It is a cage you build around your own heart, and then you live inside it. I looked at my 31 years of carefully maintained unforgiveness and I saw the cage for the first time. The forgiveness conversation doesn't require the other person to be present. It doesn't require them to deserve it. It doesn't require a single change in the accounting of what happened. It only requires you to decide that you are done living in the cage. What I found when I laid down 31 years of weight was the most startling thing. I found space. Just open space. Room I had not had access to in 3 decades. You are allowed to have that conversation. With yourself, with the person, or just with the quiet of an early morning. You are allowed to set yourself free. That is what forgiveness is. Freedom. Not for them. For you. Conversation number 6. The one where you say what this life has meant. This is the one nobody ever has. And it is, I think, the most important one of all. At 107 years old, I have outlived almost everyone I began this life with. And I have watched, again and again, as people left this world without ever having said, to the people they loved, to their children, to the people who would carry them forward, what their life had meant. What they had learned. What they wanted those people to know before they were gone. Not a will. Not an obituary. A conversation. A real one. Sitting in a room together, face to face, where you say, here is what I know. Here is what I wish I had done sooner. Here is what I hope for you. Here is what this, all of this, has meant to me. People put this conversation off because it feels final. Because having it means acknowledging that there is an end. But I will tell you what 107 years has taught me. The conversation is not about the end. It is about making the middle matter more. When my son sat down with me 2 Thanksgivings ago and asked me, genuinely asked me, what I had learned from living this long, and I answered him honestly, we both sat in that kitchen for 2 hours and neither of us wanted to leave. It was one of the finest hours of my life. Not because it was about the end. Because it was entirely, completely alive. You are allowed to have this conversation while you are still fully here to have it. Before the urgency of a hospital room forces it. Before the window closes. While there is still coffee in the pot and time in the afternoon and nothing stopping you but the habit of waiting. 6 conversations. 6 doors that most people spend their entire lives walking past. I am not telling you these things because I lived perfectly. I am telling you because I did not. I had conversations too late. I had some that I nearly missed entirely. I have carried, at different points in my life, every one of the burdens I just described to you. But what I found, every single time I finally had the conversation I had been postponing, was not what I feared. I feared rupture. I feared rejection. I feared the conversation blowing something apart. What I found instead, every time, without exception, was connection. Not performance. Not managed distance. Actual, real. This is who we really are, connection. The kind that holds. The kind that you can lean your full weight against. An ordinary life, fully spoken, turns out to be the most extraordinary thing there is. I want to say this directly to you now. The apology you have been carrying, you are allowed to deliver it. Even if you're not sure it will be received. Even if it has been 20 years. Even if you are not entirely certain you were wrong. The door opens from your side. You are allowed to open it today. The love you have been assuming is obvious. You are allowed to say it out loud. In actual words. To the actual person. Today. The honest conversation you have been managing around. You are allowed to stop managing and start speaking. The relationship can hold more truth than you think. Most relationships are far stronger than the silence protecting them. The conversation about what you actually want. You are allowed to have it. You are allowed to know what you want. You are allowed to say it. The forgiveness that is waiting. You are allowed to give it. Not for them. For the space it will return to you. For the room in your chest where the cage used to be. And the conversation about what this life has meant. The one that feels too final, too large, too close to the end. You are allowed to have it while you are fully here. While the coffee is still hot. While there is still time for it to be one of the finest hours of your life. Not one of the last. I am 107 years old. I have lived long enough to know that nothing in this world is waiting for you the way an unspoken truth is waiting. It never leaves. It only gets heavier. You do not have to wait until 107 to put it down. You can put it down today. You can walk into a room, or pick up a phone, or sit down across from someone you love, and begin. Begin. If something in here touched you today, if one of those 6 conversations put a name and a face in your mind, someone you have been meaning to reach, I want you to leave the word open in the comments. Not for me. As a promise to yourself. And if you want to keep having conversations like this one, honest, unhurried, from someone who has nothing left to lose by telling the truth, subscribe. Not for the numbers. So that the next time you need a reminder that you are allowed to speak, it finds you. Share this with someone who has a conversation they've been putting off. A friend who is still managing around something. A son who hasn't called. A daughter who is still carrying an apology. Give them this. Thank you for being here. I mean that more than you know.